Welcome back. You're watching News Desk. Now we want to continue with that conversation on climate change and the environment in general. Dr. Isaac Kalua Green, who is an environmentalist and an entrepreneur, is still with me here in studio. Now, you were talking about the fact that we need to be prepared. So I just want us to go back to the conversation on Lake Turkana swelling. For us, we already know, the government already knows. But then how do we prepare those living around the lake, the communities are living around that lake specifically? How best can they be prepared?
Very good question. Thank you so much. And I think one of the things that we need to start looking at is why would Lake Victoria and why would Lake Nakuru, why would Turkana be said to be filling up and all that? And so that once we understand, because some of these things, we take them lightly. We don't understand the effects and why they're happening. Majorly, climate change and all these activities are caused by human. When we talk about some lakes filling up more than they would and water levels going high, majorly is one of the human activities, including farming, where we have farmed in the wrong places. Water has been in plenty and has driven that water into silting the lakes. And therefore, the water levels tend to go higher because there is too much silting. This is one side of it. There is also what we can't do much about because of so much activities happening everywhere in different parts of the world, which is a tectonic effect where the earth is said to be moving, and therefore you cannot be able to do much about that, because when it happens, it has happened, just like it happened in the beginning of the world, those million years back. And therefore, these are some of the issues that are definitely happening. Then there is, of course, the climatic change issues because of what we have been able to do, messing up the environment in one way or another, and therefore rainfall effects and activities that are done in other parts of the world are leading to some of this. So having known this is for the government, for the private sector, to look at what we can be able to do. It has to be very systematic. One, when we talk about governance issues, we need to have a structure that makes sense, a structure that is aligned to the entire government, a structure that would attract the government budget system in a manner that is so practical that can be taken down to mwananchi. Because when you speak to a Kenyan at the grassroots, they don't understand what climate change is about. But they know that rain, it is colder the season than it has always been, or it was hotter in July last year than it was today, or rains, I did not harvest what I planted, and so much more. So that we bring down this information to the level of every Kenyan what they need. How do you do that? First, and this is an appeal. I'll take this opportunity in your studio to make a very passionate appeal to the presidency and also the government in general. The Climate Change Council needs to be activated. And I request you, Your Excellency President, if you can activate this law and sign it into a position where everyone can be able to understand and be able to take it up, and budget of the government to be aligned. Because if it was there, issues like gas, which has now attracted the VAT of 16% and therefore gone too high, mwananchi would not understand what it all means, and they will all switch back to what we have been doing, which is just the charcoal and the firewood, which is obvious because one misaction leads to a greater mess and a mess in the society. How do we deal with this when we also know that we have signed an international protocol and commitment to reducing our greenhouse emissions to 32%? The world is targeting to reduce it by 45%, and commitments have been done. If we are not seen to be doing this by the world that we are looking at, where we are also looking at them paying for the mess that they are doing in the environment, our commitment is not clear. And therefore, it starts at that level. And it is my appeal, all the advisors of His Excellency the President, including the Minister and everyone else, I think it is time that we prioritize this, and this should not even be a discussion anymore, because we know the importance. And Kenya had made strides to the level that we have been respected world over for having a climate change council that has never been done elsewhere, and made this kind of strides. We will then, having done this, it will be aligned to the communities in the so-called county governments that will be able to align activities that would be able to create livelihoods that are tangible to the mwananchi at the grassroots. So these are some of the activities that we need to make and start creating businesses. Because, as I said, issues of climate change is simple. It is a matter of governance, and the other side, it is sustainable livelihoods, the actual economic activities. On the other side, the private sector has made commitments to be able to deal with some of the things. And therefore, institutions like KEPSA, institutions like Kenya Association of Manufacturers, because the law is already in place, it is going to be very easy to get institutions like UN and everyone else to support, and also attract the Global Fund, which has remained unutilized in the country, to a point that it can be used. And we need to see these things deeper. When we talk about Lake Turkana, it goes deeper. We are talking in our own Kenya Wildlife Service. We are losing animals, the wildlife, to levels that can never even be reported. There are times that elephants are dying in their hundreds, but you can't even say that to the world, because there is a problem, and they lack funding, they lack institutions. The organization of these institutions to pull in one direction, so that we have institutions like Kenya Water Towers coordinating and working very well with Kenya Forest Service, the Kenya Warma, all these institutions to be well coordinated, so that resources are not lost, and there is accountability to also lock corruption out of this kind of processes. So it's something that we need to be very strategic, and therefore everyone is responsible, and getting the institutions that are dealing with these issues, including the institution that is supposed to advise us with matters of climate, to be well funded. They have equipment, but sometimes they can't be able to go out to be able to deal with these issues. And where is the money? It's available from the private sector and other senses. So thanks for asking that, and I'm sure it's so deep we may not be able to address it all at once. But I think the point is getting closer home.
Yes, but I want to stay on that just for like a minute or so, Dr. Kalua. Yes, there is activating the law, there is getting the funds, but what about implementation, which is also a challenge we face? How do we ensure that we have effective implementation of this law?
Education. We need to educate the people. You don't just make people do something. You don't make people, like the Ministry of Environment is doing a lot of effort. Look at this year, 2 billion trees target to be able to reach 10%. Look at what the Council of Governors that is doing tremendous work in August. They will be doing a number of trees. Look at all these activities. Yes, very many activities. We have the right people that are in place. But we need to explain people why we are doing these things. We need to make them see how they can place food on their table while doing what we must be able to do. People understand why they are doing it more than doing what they must be doing, because it just remains out there and makes no sense.
All right, so since we're educating people, maybe we can start now. Get we wait for the government to activate the laws, the people on the ground, what can you and I, or the people watching us, do to ensure that we do not get to a worse place?
Quite a lot, and thank you so much. That's a very nice way you have put it. One, everyone has a responsibility. We breathe air, and we take in oxygen and bring out the gases that are part of what is messing up the environment. Where do we get the oxygen from? It's from a tree. So plant the air that you breathe. This is an activity. Kenya is targeting to reach 10%. My prayer and my commitment, and I have asked God to help us as a nation, is to do a minimum of 40%. And we started as Green Africa Foundation and partners with the Ministry of Environment, Kenya Forest Service, the Rotary Clubs of Kenya and others, the campaign that is called Plant Your Age. The minimum that one should be able to do is to have a forest or a number of trees equivalent to your age standing on what you call your land, and leave the rest to others to continue doing this. We need to get the corporates to be able to plant trees equivalent to the products that they are producing. My institution that I head in Honda, Kenya, we're now working on how to produce 1 tree for every motorbike that we produce. And other companies should be able to do this so that we can have water, because forest equals to water, equals to air, equals to livelihoods, equals to much more food in our farms. Everyone has an activity that we can be able to do, but it must not be them doing it. It must be starting from me. Why am I doing this? At least minimum, I need oxygen. And therefore, a tree that is planted makes the difference in my home. I need water, and the rest would follow. Okay. These are some of the simplest activities that we can be able to do. Of course, they are vast in other areas where we are careful of the standards, the institutions like NEMA, which should be able to control air pollution, the vehicles that we drive, how efficiently we service them, because then we can reduce the pollution in the air. Activities are very many. But when you look out on what you can be able to do, you'll find it very easily.
Earlier on, and I'm sorry to take you back, you mentioned some farming activities that actually, contribute to these issues that we're facing. What are those farming activities, and how can we avoid them?
As a country, we are using a lot of chemicals in our farms. And some of these activities end up messing the quality of soil and messing up the quality of our water, and therefore going ahead to even mess our health. When you look at the bill that the country is spending on our health and insurance, it's very high. So these are some of the activities. We can start going back to the organic activities. Do you know that we have people in this country who do not take vegetables that they make, because they have produced tomatoes, they have produced cabbages with highly infectious chemicals, and therefore they know how dangerous they are, and they are going out to sell this to other people. There are people who produce goats, and they know very well that they have injected them with some serious medication that may not pass the test of time and recommended by various institutions, and this ends up to be sold, and we have it as meat in our own places. There are practices that we are just doing that are not right. Farming in the riparian space is another issue that we need to start avoiding and deal with better farming practices, because we are throwing away and taking away the soil. And we are a country that is full of technocrats, very experienced people. The government has done quite a lot to train officers, and we end up having a way that we do it ourselves without consulting. We need to check with the agricultural officer, with the forest officer, with Kenya Forest Service, with every institution of water. How do I do this in the best way that is practically possible to enable us to mitigate some of the challenges that we have? And therefore, that free education, that art of consultation, and not imagining that these things are not real, will be able to help us to come out of these practices that are not right.
All right, thank you for that. Now, even as we conclude, the Food and Agriculture Organization, together with the government of Kenya, has just signed a plan to mitigate drought in arid areas. Is this a step in the right direction, or are we going in circles?
Very, very much so. It's time that we move from plan to action. And of course, there are many people who don't take up some of these things very seriously. I request that every officer, every professional who is able to take up and who is signing off this information be shared equally, be shared freely, so that people can be able to take up. Nothing is so potent as the silent influence of a good example. If every officer in this country does what they can know best and make sure that they train a few people to be able to do that, and make sure that whoever is applying this, they understand the value of this, and kick out corruption where we must kick it out, I think we will be home dealing with some of these issues, because international organizations are many. There's a lot of green fund out there that is just waiting, but they wonder who is it that we are going to give, including electric cars, motorcycles, including institutions, high foundations world over, but they lack the people who can be able to do this. So this signed agreement needs to be taken very seriously, be applied in the best way possible, so that we are seen as a nation that we are advancing in the best directions. Embassies are here, and everyone is watching, and we need to be able to do the best for our country.
Okay, I have a viewer asking a question, and we have like 1 minute, 30 seconds to answer this. On one side, we're seeing drought. On the other side, we're seeing lakes that are, filling up. What is the science behind all this?
Climate change.
It's
just what our activities are doing.
Okay.
We are doing wrong activities in the wrong places. We are doing right activities in the wrong places. A mixture of this leads to the same. And therefore, it is just our own activities that are leading to this. This is all about climate change. And maybe we may not be able to explain this within the 1 minute that we have.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good place to end it. Dr. Isaac Kalua Green, who is an environmentalist and equally an entrepreneur. Thank you very much for shedding some light. I have learned something from this conversation.